Hi, everyone, and welcome to the 7 Terms and Conditions of a Robust Learning-Centered Community. This session is focusing on instructors as leaders and collaborators, advocating for community building, equitable access, and diverse student needs. By the end of this session, when you finish watching this video and looking at the attached slides, you will be able to understand ESD standards for educators, what it means to be a leader, ESD standards for educators, when it means to be a collaborator, recognize the need for collaboration with your colleagues and students to promote engaging and inclusive learning, identify tools and resources to meet the needs of the diverse students, explain strategies to integrate the ESD standards for educators, number 2, leader, and number 4, collaborator. Devise the implementation of the ESD standard for educators, share ideas via Slack app, and prepare ideas to share in the follow-up session. The follow-up session is going to take place on Thursday, the 4th of March at 6:30 p.m. I would like to bring up this slide. This is something that we looked at during session number 1 when we discussed what it means to be a facilitator. And so this slide quotes this suggestion, this concern from Richard Collada, who's the CEO of ESD. His concern is about the digital divide, and he had a compelling speech in 2013 at a TED conference where he talked about the digital divide not as a reference to digital access, like who has internet and who has a laptop or who has a tablet, who has a phone. No, he talked about the digital divide as the divide between those who know how to use technology to reimagine learning and those who simply use technology to digitize traditional learning practices. And if you take a look at the image right here underneath Collada's statement, you can see that this model points at digitizing education and what it means if you simply enhance education with the help of digital technology. So how you use it for substitution and augmentation, and what it means when you use technology in a transformative way and you actually modify or redefine your teaching practices. If you click on this image right here, you can actually go to the website where there's a detailed explanation of the SAMR model.
I'm going to talk to.
Now let's take a look at the ESD standards. And this is a slide that you might have seen last week already. So what the ESD standards are for educators and what the ESD standards are for students. And this week, focusing on being a leader and being a collaborator. Last week, we discussed what it means to be a facilitator. And I just wanted to point out one thing, that being a collaborator is not just a standard for educators, it's also a standard for students. And if you follow the link here, you can really see the similarities between the skill set between the standards for students and educators. So what does it mean to be a leader? Educators seek out opportunities for leadership to support student empowerment and success to improve teaching and learning. Well, what will educators do who follow this standard? Shape, advance, and accelerate a shared vision for empowered learning with technology by engaging with education stakeholders. Advocate for equitable access to educational technology, digital content, and learning opportunities to meet the diverse of all students. Model for colleagues the identification, exploration, evaluation, curation, and adoption of new digital resources and tools for learning. What you can do is you can click on the hyperlinked phrase right there, and it will take you to the ESD website. And if you scroll down, here's number 2, being a leader. And once you open this drop-down box and you hover over the hyperlinked phrases, there's more information for you. So there's more information each time you hover over the blue hyperlinks. So you can really think about what standard number 2 means. And what are the things that you can do to become a leader according to the ESD standards? Let me just go back to the slide deck right here. And this is something that I would like to share with you, the way I interpreted being a leader and the way I interpreted, and let me just go back to A, to B, and to C, what it means to advocate for equitable access, learning opportunities, diverse needs of all students, and the adoption, the exploration, identification, evaluation of new digital resources and tools for learning. So the way I see it is this. I think the key is offering assignment variety for our students. So for example, if you just want to review a chapter or do some vocabulary practice, you can do it by using PictoChart. It's a free website. And something that I do, it's sort of a formative assessment. I call it the ABC PictoChart. So I ask them to review a chapter. They can review a concept, topic of the week by putting the key concepts in alphabetical order. And because you're using a PictoChart, which is basically creating infographics, it's also colorful, so creativity comes into the picture as well. But I offer students to also sketchnote one-pagers. Of course, I offer them to write essays, but in my case, I invite them to add interactive elements in the essay. So for instance, if they practice source integration, I ask them to provide a hyperlink if they quote or paraphrase or summarize information from a text that could take us to perhaps the website, to a video clip, to an image. So adding the interactive elements will make it easier for the students to remember what they're writing about, and it's going to make reading that essay so much better for us teachers. Mind maps, so similarly to PictoCharts or one-pagers, mind maps are also places where students can practice writing, but they can also show creativity and they can show connections between certain concepts. They can show connections between information that they have obtained from various texts or that they share together during discussion, for instance. Adding images, video clips, colors just enhances all that visual experience. For instance, podcasting is another way. So maybe one student will choose to write an essay while others want to have either a solo podcast or a group-based podcast. The ultimate learning objective is probably the same exact thing, but how they get there can be through all these different assignments. One specific example is when I ask students to complete a case analysis of a canceled person. Cancel culture is huge now, and it's a subject of a lot of contemporary debates. And so I ask students to analyze the case of a canceled person or show or artist or an event. The test can be handwritten, it can be typed, it can be through a digital tool, so it's up to them. Essentially, they will have to complete the same assignment, but depending on their needs, depending on their strengths and weaknesses, they can complete that assignment by doing it, let's say, through an essay, an interactive essay, or a mind map. It can be a video blog entry, slideshow, slideshow normally comes with voice narration, using hypothesis as they annotate the article about that cancellation, or designing a digital poster. So it's up to the students what they want. They have to decide, choose from this menu. And so depending on their strengths and weaknesses, they will choose the one that's easier for them to demonstrate their skills. And what you can see here is basically what everybody will have to include in the assignment. So what you can do now is you can take a few minutes and just think about your experience. How do you normally voice your thoughts about education technology policy? And what you can think about is perhaps, what do you normally put in your syllabus? What's the institutional advice to put in your syllabus? Banning electronics, allowing electronics, and to what extent? Also, are you encouraged and are your students encouraged to use electronics to enhance their learning experience? So besides pure note-taking, are they encouraged to use it for learning? So the second thing that you can think about is how do you raise self-awareness about learning preferences? And if you just think about what I just showed you right here. So if you offer different options, do you explain it to the students why there could be different options? What are the skills that they might be able to use depending on what they choose from the menu? So just allow them to think about their strengths and weaknesses. What I normally ask students to do is to write a journal entry before they start working on the assignment and sort of justify why they choose or how they pick the assignment that they pick from this list. And I can give them feedback on whether or not I think it fits them. But it really just allows them to slow down and think about their strengths and weaknesses, and whether or not they can actually demonstrate their skills and the knowledge, the obtained information by choosing the assignment, the type of assignment from the list. And so give yourself a few minutes. You can pause this video and think about these two questions right here. How do you voice your thoughts on educational technology policy? Do you voice your thoughts about it at all? Are you allowed to contribute in the institution where you work? Are your thoughts welcome there? And so the second thing is, how do you raise self-awareness about learning preferences when it comes to students? Do you normally set some time aside to talk about them? And so the question here is, how do we provide equitable access to learning? And one example that I would like to bring in for you is what I do with the students. Before we do any sort of discussion in class, before I ask them to write an essay, to write a paragraph, I engage them in extensive reading. And every time they read something, I ask them to take notes on what they read. So what you see here is basically a simple version of the Cornell Notes template that I ask students to fill out. And so, for instance, for this task, students were asked to watch the DigCit Commit virtual conference that happened in 2020 February, and Richard Collada's keynote speech. And so they have to watch it and then take notes. So here they need to write down keywords and definitions, just notes themselves. What is the value of this talk the text itself. Write a brief summary, practice source integration. And what I do is, once again, equitable access, giving them some scaffolded sentences or phrases. So we're practicing source integration, quote from Collada, something that you think really resonates with you. And so I give them 3 different sort of sentence stems that they have to complete. And then, of course, they have to practice APA style citation as well. What you see here is a student choice. So students are encouraged to either write their notes, their Cornell notes, in their notebook, a piece of paper, or type it in a hyperdoc that they use for my course. And so this student actually chose to do the handwritten version. And that happens often, that when students want to do the one-pagers, sketchnoting one-pagers or drawing mind maps, they actually choose to do it by hand. I ask them to use colors though, so then they can remind themselves what stands for what. And so this student did a fantastic job visualizing Richard Collada's keynote speech. And as you can see, the student received the maximum score for the task itself. And at this point, what I would like you to do is just think about how you can provide equitable access to learning in your courses. So you've heard a few tips from me. Take a moment and start collecting ideas of what you do. And the reason why I'm asking you to collect those ideas, because I'm hoping that you will attend the follow-up session during which you will share what you do in your courses to create an equitable access to learning. And it would be great to bring in all the examples, all the ideas to exchange, sort of a show and share. On this slide, if you click on this video clip here, you can listen to Sir Ken Robinson talking about diversity and diverse students and why it's important to think about diversity when we teach in education. And here's another segment of Richard Collada's keynote speech from the 2013 TED conference.
How many of you have got children? Can I ask you?
I apologize for skipping it over, but once you receive the slides, you can listen to the clips. So once again, I would like you to join me during the follow-up session on this topic. And here you can just follow this link to refresh your memory about what it means to be a leader, 2A, 2B, and 2C of the standards. And so during the follow-up session, what you can do is what 2C suggests: model for colleagues, the identification, the exploration, the evaluation, curation, and adoption of new digital resources and tools for learning. It is a very important step to do in teaching, to basically explore what's out there and identify tools that you can use, evaluate the fitness of the tool. How does it fit your course? Can students really use it? Does it make sense to use the tool in your course? So how can you adopt it? So it's always nice to exchange ideas because there's so much information out there and you can get overwhelmed very easily. But if you have a chance to share all that information with colleagues, it makes it so much easier. All right, so let's take a look at ESD Standards for Educators number 4, what it means to be a collaborator according to the ESD Standards. Educators dedicate time to collaborate with both colleagues and students to improve practice, discover, share, resources and ideas, and solve problems. So that's exactly what we're doing here, what we're doing with this professional learning circle, and hopefully many more in the future. So this standard has 4 substandards for A, B, C, and D. And what you can see is the sort of the recurring theme is creating authentic learning experiences and leveraging technology to do that job, collaborating with students, with the learners, with your colleagues, with the institution, but also focusing on cultural competency when collaborating and communicating with colleagues and students as well. So let's just zoom in on creating authentic learning experiences. And once again, I will just give you some information that I do in my courses. 2 things that I would like to highlight here. One is adding a course theme. So something that I discovered over the past years is if the course that I teach, and it could be an academic writing class, research writing class, or academic discussion skills-based class, it helps if the course has an actual theme. And so most of the reading assignments, the listening, speaking, writing assignments revolve around the same topic. The topics that I choose are quite vague, so it means that we can really work on expanding the vocabulary, our vocabulary bank. So for instance, one course theme that I like to use is Generation Z. Most of my students are Generation Z, they're Gen Z or the internet generation. And I find that they don't always know their potentials or the obstacles that they face. And so it's good to read about them. And very often students have this aha moment like, oh, I didn't realize, or oh, okay, I can do that, okay. And so it's a great course theme to adopt. Or digital citizenship. That's another, there's so much to it. There's so much to discover, so much to discuss and write about and listen to, and I highly recommend it. Sustainability. Students can actually connect. They understand what it means to run a sustainable life, and what it means to live in a sustainable community, workplace, school. So a lot of examples that they can bring in. It's close to them as well. And once again, because most of the students are Gen Z, sustainability really matters to them. And so they can connect. So these are just 3 course themes that I'm ready to share with you and encourage you to adopt, because once again, students can connect. And these are as authentic as they can be. Another thing to highlight, and I just mentioned it a few minutes ago, is incorporating integrated skills. We teach English as a second language or as a foreign language. And so in order to provide students with sort of the full circle, it helps if we approach skills building through the integrated skills building process. I typically ask students to read about the topic, listen to experts talk about the topic. Then I encourage the students to talk about the topic, either through structured open class or small group discussions. And then I ask them to write about it. So by the time they get to the writing, they've already read about it, heard experts talk about it, they talked it out with the other classmates, and then so they should be ready to now write about it. Or if you think about assignment variety, it doesn't have to be an essay or a paragraph. Perhaps it's a slide deck that they have to put together with, of course, well-written texts on those slides, or mind maps. But again, the maps will have to include comprehensive and well-written texts. So do the picture charts and sketchnoting. So you can always sneak in paragraphs or sentence groups into those other types of assignments. And let me just talk about collaboration and modeling. It really helps students to, and just, connected to raising self-awareness about one's learning preferences. It helps when students understand what it means to learn. And so if you provide templates, if you ask them, okay, put together an interactive essay, let's say put together a problem solution analysis or a rhetorical analysis, they might say, what does it look like? I can't even imagine what it looks like. And it's not enough if you just say, well, rhetorical analysis, you look at the speaker and the occasion and the purpose. If you actually show them one that's already there. So if you give them a template and match it with student sample, but not only the A's. So sure, show them what a rhetorical analysis, a problem solution analysis, comparison contrast analysis looks like when it's an A, when it's 100%. But show them something that's 80% or 75%, or look, this is a 50% essay. Make sure that yours, and let's talk about it. Why do you think it's only 50%? So again, involving the students in the learning process itself can be hugely beneficial. Providing roadmaps. Okay, how do you get there? If you have to write a certain essay, how do you get there? Step 1, step 2, step 3, and make it visual. So once you have access to my slides, feel free to click on these hyperlinked suggestions, and then you can see examples within. So for example, when we talk about roadmaps, this is what the roadmap that I created for my student for the rhetorical analysis or the soapstone analysis looks like. And so students can open these dots and really engage. Go over step 1, 2, 3, 4, and additional help. Modeling anything in the class. So for instance, when we do the first Cornell notes, I do the Cornell notes for them. As we watch a recording, I take notes so that they see what it looks like. You can always share student samples. That's what I do in the discussion board. I have student samples. And so, okay, this is what a good set of Cornell notes looks like. Break down everything into smaller chunks. I'm sure you've heard this before, but it really works. If you break it down, they have less to take in at once. Let's face it, our students, once again, they're Generation Z, or most of them are Generation Z. And even if we don't think about Gen Z, even if you think about Gen Xers or Gen Y, the millennials, we all watch video tutorials if we want to know how, right? So share your video tutorials, create your own video tutorials and share them with your class. And then you can check on YouTube how many views you had. Using visuals is very, very important. And so video tutorials is just one type of visual that you might use, but just any images that can help enhance that learning and the understanding can be useful. And so what you can do right now is take a moment and start gathering ideas, something that you can bring to the follow-up session. Are you using any collaborative tools that you're ready to share? Do you use Padlet? How do you use it? Do you ask students to use Google Docs, share document? Or do you ask students to follow you on Pear Deck. What has your experience been? Do you ask students to use perusal or hypothesis, one of these collaborative note-taking tools that you can also use for a quick discussion as well instead of a discussion board? Are there any digital resources that you can share with us? So please think about these two different things and bring your ideas with you to the follow-up session. All right, so demonstrating cultural competency. So it's basically 4D, being a collaborator according to ESD standards. Well, it also means that you have cultural competency. Because you are English language teachers, you probably have a good deal of cultural competency. And please think about what you have and what you have to share with us. Something that I find helpful is to always slow down. If I'm in a situation where students might say something that could be perceived even a little bit offensive, or if I'm about to say something, I slow down, take a moment and think about what I want to say and how I want to say it. And it's almost like, you know, when your soul leaves your body and then you watch yourself from the outside. Okay, what am I about to say, and how was I planning on saying it? What tone? And because every little thing can be misunderstood. But also when it comes to cultural competency, not just the sort of intercultural differences, as in my student is from Brazil, my student is from China, from Kazakhstan. No, not just that. I mean, of course, that's very important to develop sort of this intercultural competency where you don't even have to really think about and you can just operate effectively in any situation. So that doesn't just mean that. It's also, and that's something that I would like you to think about, is the generational differences. I actually found this this great image that shows generations in the modern workplace. And if you just reflect on your experience, not only working with your students who might be millennials or Gen Zers, but also working with your colleagues. Maybe you had some misunderstanding, some sort of hard feelings, and it could be the cultural differences that stem from the generational differences, so the work culture, right? And if you take a look at this image right here, and there's many more that you can find online, I just picked one. It's good to have that particular insight into how different generations think, how they view, let's say, communication. And one group might prefer speaking on the phone and meeting in person, while others are fine meeting online, sending an email. Sometimes those meetings can be just an email, right? Some are okay communicating on social media. So meeting people where they are is important, and being flexible, that sometimes it's okay just to send those emails. To have a Zoom call or a FaceTime call with students if they have issues, or something that students find incredibly helpful these days is have a group chat. There's GroupMe app, or there's Slack, students, or WeChat, where students just group up and they can talk about the class. They can talk about the course material, homework. They can exchange ideas. It's almost like the modern day study group, if you think about it. And I really applaud that they moved the study group to this online sphere, because let's face it, our students feel comfortable there. And so if you haven't promoted any group chats, just think about them as the online study groups, the online version of study groups. All right, so we are near the end of this slideshow and this talk about what it means to be a leader and a collaborator according to the ESD Standards 2 and 4. So think about if there's anything that you are still wondering, if you are interested to hear about, and you can simply email me those questions. And I would like you to also think about if you can relate the information that you heard from me to any information that you obtained at other professional development sessions or to your personal professional experience in your classroom. And so I hope that I will see you during the follow-up session in March, where you can bring your ideas. Let's call it a show and share session, and we can learn from each other so we can actually demonstrate what it means to be a collaborator and the leader itself. If you would like to see the references and information that I obtained from text, you can just go to the last 2 slides, and that's where you will find them. I highly recommend Sir Ken Robinson's talks and Richard Collada's many talks as well. But of course, a lot of additional information is available here for you to learn from. Thank you for listening, and I hope I will see you at the follow-up session.